Hey guys, welcome to Watch Talk. Have you ever wondered why many car enthusiasts are also watch nerds? There's actually some pretty legitimate similarities between the two, and I'm gonna go through top 5 things that watches have in common with cars. And more importantly, explore why the two passions go so well together. Oh yeah, I can't forget about my wrist check. Seiko Sarg 009, really awesome Seiko. We'll be sure to do a review on this soon. So from the industry perspective, there's a lot of companies producing a lot of different parts, but there's also a lot of brands that share components and make them available to other companies. You see that a lot with boutique companies and boutique brands or higher end brands where they would build their cars but use engine parts from other companies. Good example of this is Pagani. Pagani Zondas are using V12 AMG engines built by Mercedes. A Wiseman, German boutique company, uses BMW M engines. So there's a lot of resource sharing and component sharing, not only within a certain brand, but outside of that brand. That's really similar to the watch industry as well, because in the watch industry, you have a number of different companies making their own movements. You know, Seiko, Citizen with their Miyota movements, Swatch Group with their ETA movements, you got Sellita, you got Seagull in the Chinese company making movements. And a lot of these movements are also available for other companies to use. So a lot of micro brands use already made movements by these companies. And not only micro brands, there's well-known brands that use ETA movements. There's brands that use Seagull movements. So a lot of resource sharing are also happening in the watch industry. And if you look at the two industries together, they're very similar in that way. So apart from the resources, there's also a lot of similarities between how you drive a car versus how you use a watch. And I'm specifically talking about the movement. And it's interesting that in both industries, if you compare the two, they're actually reversed. I'll tell you what I mean. In the car industry, you basically have two main types of driving. You have an automatic transmission and a manual transmission. And in the watch industry, you also have two main types of movements. You have a quartz movement or a mechanical movement. I like to think that a car with an automatic transmission is like a watch with a quartz movement. You put it in drive and then you go. Whereas in a watch, you put in the battery, set the time, and it just ticks. You don't have to do anything about it. You just let it run. If you think about a manual car, a car with a manual transmission, I see that like a watch with a mechanical movement, whether it's automatic or mechanical hand winding, because you actually have to do stuff to use it. In a car, you have to shift, you have to put your foot on the clutch, you have to put that in gear, and that's how you drive the car. It requires you to perform tasks, whereas mechanical watches are very similar. It requires you to wind it. Either you have to wind it with the rotor or you need to wind it with the crown. But it requires you to give it some energy. Each car you drive is different. They have a different personality. Whether it's the steering response or the throttle or how it brakes or how it handles turns, every car is different. In watches, it's also very similar. You get a different experience when you're wearing a diver versus a dress watch versus a field watch versus a chronograph. What I find really interesting around this whole notion of personality is the acceptance of quirkiness. I drive a Miata, and the Miata is a pretty low-powered car, but I'm totally okay with that. I love the car because it doesn't have that much power and because I can use all of it all the time. With watches, it's very similar. Yes, mechanical watches aren't very accurate. You're gonna lose 3 seconds a day, 5 seconds a day, sometimes 25 seconds a day, but you're okay with that and you live with that. And it becomes part of that personality. And it's like you have to take care of it. There are watches that have very quirky movements. Orient Mako has a date pusher and a crown, and you can only set the date by pushing the date pusher. It's not a flaw, and some people kind of knock it because it's not as convenient and it's not hacking and hand writing, but that is what makes it so quirky, and people who love that Mako accept the quirkiness. If you want a quartz watch to keep perfect time, that's great. It's just like saying that if you want a Corolla or a Camry to be the most reliable sedan that you can drive, that's awesome. But if you want something with more personality, you can get that with watches and cars. Mods, another thing they have in common. When you buy a watch, one of the first things that we like to do is just change the strap. It changes the look of the watch, it changes the feel of the watch, but you go even deeper. You can change out the crystal, you can change out the dial, you can change out the hands, you can change out the movement itself, and you can completely change the watch as it is. A lot of Seikos get modded, a lot of Citizens get modded, not so much in Swiss, at least from what I've seen. That's just like cars. You can mod every part of the car. Change out the wheels, change out the suspension, give it a turbo, change out the interior. It allows you to customize your watch and your car to who you are. It's a sense of identifying your own personality in the watch you wear to the car you drive. And the number one thing that I think watches and cars have in common is the feels, the emotion, the attachment that you get when you use them. When you've had a car for years and years and years, and you get to a point where you have to sell it or you have to get rid of it. As car enthusiasts, that's a sad day, because when you see it go, you're reminded of all the great times you had in that car, all the places you've been, all the people that you took along the ride, all the meets you've been to. That attachment stays with you. It almost becomes a part of you, and losing it is like losing a part of your family in a way. With watches, it's very similar. When you have to get rid of a watch for whatever reason, either you have to sell it because you're pursuing a grail somewhere, or you're selling it for financial reasons, you feel sad letting it go because you think about all the places you've been with this watch, what it commemorates, right? And at what point in time were you wearing this and how you felt that time. You have an emotional attachment to a lot of these things. For car enthusiasts, cars not only take you from point A to point B, it's how it takes you from point A to point B that matters. For watch enthusiasts, watches are not just tools to let you tell time. They're tools that lets you experience how you can tell time. And with that, thank you for watching.